Good evening, everyone. Happy Hannukah. A big happy Hannukah to you. I thought you can try and see the lights of the menorah. So we've done it this way around. First of all, a big thank you to our sponsor for the evening. In Mitzvah Hashem, she's asked that it should be for a full shalema for the Holy Israel. Mitzvah Hashem, this very, very holy Torah. As Hashem, we're going to learn tonight. So let's get to it. If you open the Chumash Parshas Miketz, Siyata D'Shma, we're going to connect parts of Miketz to Hannukah tonight and really hopefully have a very, very inspiring evening. So if we look at the first pasuk, Vayihi Miketz Shenosayim Yomim, and it was at the end of 2 years. So as you all know, Yosef HaTzadik is not just in Egypt, which in mysticism is called a prison. Mitzrayim stands for Meitzar Yam, the imprisonment of the spiritual, the Yam, which is the 50th level. But he's now in prison in a prison. He's now in the prison there. And it was at the end of 2 years. The end of 2 years of what? As we know, Yosef was in prison prior to that 10 years. So it should have said, it indicates 12 years, not Shenosayim Yomim. So we're going to get to that in a minute. But first of all, there's an amazing medrash, which we already see the correlation. Always we read, so Miketz is always connected to Parshas Hannukah. It's always connected. Miketz to Hannukah. Everyone could press mute, please. It would be awesome. And I'll just mute all. And the medrash says the following. The medrash says from a pasuk in Iyov, if you want to look it up, it's in Perek. Just have a look. I think it's Perek Chaf Ches in Iyov, pasuk Gimel. Kates Shom Lachoshech. Where Iyov says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made an end to darkness. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made an end to darkness. And the Medrash connects this to Vayi Miketz Shenosayim Yomim, meaning the darkness, and let's go through Tzaddik. So Tzaddik HaKohen explains like this. What is darkness in Ruchnius? Darkness is where you don't have light, is where you don't have Torah, is where you can't see the oneness of Hashem, you can't learn Torah. What the Yevonim tried to do is Dafka put us in darkness. And Dafka, the things they stopped, they had the Havana, the understanding of what was critical for us to be in the light. So they tried to ban Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, Bris Milah, Torah. It says whenever the Yetzer Hara is strong, when the Yetzer Hara is sholate, you're in darkness. But it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu who decides when we put an end to darkness. And the way to put an end to darkness is obviously to see the nace, to have the dveikus. So for example, isn't it interesting, the word choshech, darkness, Rav Tzadok says the very same letters, the acronym shochach, which is to forget. One of the things they tried to do, right now, they tried to make us forget our Torah. Again, the Yevonim, they understood that if we can make us forget Hashem, forget the light, forget Torah, that plunges us into darkness, and therefore the rectification for that is to remember, is to see. And isn't it amazing? Can you think of any other Yom Tov where the Yom Tov actually has to fall on a Shabbos? The Shabbos is within Hannukah, but also Rosh Chodesh. That's unheard of. We don't have another Rosh Chodesh. Even Rosh Hashanah isn't called Rosh Chodesh. The Rosh Chodesh per se, Pesach doesn't have Rosh Chodesh, Sukkot doesn't have Rosh Chodesh, Hannukah has Rosh Chodesh. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling the Yevonim, no, you lost. Klal Yisrael wins. They will have the schus to continue to connect to me through Torah. At the end, there'll always be an end to the choshech, Hashem promises. Kate Shem LaChoshech, there'll always be an end to the choshech. And therefore, the choshech that Yosef was also going through was not merely a physical imprisonment. It's not that Yosef was just in prison and he couldn't have a nice supper. That wasn't pshat. He was actually trying to repair, says Tzaddik HaKohen, to repair the reasons for our choshech. In fact, Tzaddik explains the first 10 years where he was trying to have to do his own shuvah for saying Lashon Hara on his level about the 10 brothers. 1 year for each brother. We're going to see soon another reason for the second 2 years. Shortly, but Tzaddik explains, and even the extra 2 years, he was now trying to go into the causes of what got him to speak Lashon Hara. He's really trying to go into the root causes of Chet Adam Arisha, which is really amazing because according to Kabbalah, what's happening in Hannukah is really we going back to the light of Gan Eden. The Bnei Yisroel explains, I think I mentioned last week, that the 36 candles that we light over Hannukah connect to the 36 hours that HaKadosh Baruch Hu illuminated the world with his Or HaGanus, with the highest light, which then he has to store away for the tzaddikim. But Adam and Chava benefited from that light for 36 hours. And the Mekubalim explained that that's the light that we are connecting to during Hannukah. So in a sense, that's what Yosef was trying to do. He was trying to recall that light, access that light by doing teshuvah, by working on all sorts of areas of ruchnius. And that was actually what was happening in the correlation between Hannukah and Yosef coming out of the prison. And let's go through the pasuk again. It says, "Vayim miketz shenosayim yom." It was the end of 2 years. So as we said, but he was meant to be there he was already there for 10 years prior. So if you look at the last Rashi of last week's parasha in Vayishev, if you want to have a look in pasuk Chaf Gimel. So on the pasuk says, just to give you the context, as you know, the butler and the baker both had a dream in prison, right? But both had a dream in prison, which is obviously from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the baker's one, the Yosef said, unfortunately, and it's amazing. If you look at the Medrash, it says the baker's one gave Yosef a bad feeling about Klal Yisrael, and therefore he interpreted it badly. That's why it's really important. Agav, if you ever have a bad dream, not to say anything. If it's really a very scary dream, then it's worth maybe doing Chatofas Chaloim, where you get a based in together. You get 3 Shem Shabbos people together, and you stay the gears of Chatofas Chaloim, the cancellation of dream, and you give staka, but you should still never say out what the bad dream was. Because Chas v'Shalom, you say the bad dream, and then if someone hears it, and you give them, even if you tell someone a dream, and they now have a bad hargosha as a result of your dream, and they say, oh, that's what the dream means, you see from the Medrash, that's exactly what happened to Yosef, and as a result of Yosef feeling bad, he was able to interpret it badly for the baker, and he died immediately as a result of it. And for the butler, it made Yosef feel good. It spoke about good things about Klal Yisrael, about the obvious HaKadoshim. It's not the time to go into the specifics now, but the Medrash says it made Yosef feel good about Torah, good about the obvious HaKadoshim, and therefore he interpreted it well, and straight away now the butler goes to Paro on Rosh Hashanah, nonetheless. And as you all know, the Yosef said to the butler, "Viskartoni el Paro, mention me to Paro." And unfortunately, he actually says it twice. He says, remember me to Paro, remember me to Paro. He says it twice. Says Rashi, and it's interesting, it says Vayishkochehu, and he forgot him, which is really fascinating because we just now learned that forgetting is choshech. Forgetting is choshech. So you see straight away that Yosef still had to be in choshech. So now the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the flip side of choshech is forgetting. Now the butler is forgotten Yosef. And look at Rashi. Because Yosef put his trust in the butler, he had to be imprisoned for another 2 years. Because he mentioned me to Paro twice, don't forget me twice, so he's now going to be 2 years. And then amazingly, Rashi paradoxically says, as the Pasuk says, Ashrei hagever asher som Hashem iftochei. Praiseworthy is the man who puts his trust in Hashem, v'lo yifon el rehovim, and doesn't put his trust in the wrong people. It says, v'lo yiputach mitzrayim. So now we've really got a total quandary here. So it seems on one hand, Rashi's saying that Yosef goes to be in prison. for an extra 2 years, because he mentions the Paro twice, mentions the butler twice. Don't forget to say my name. He kindly gave him his business card and said, I can interpret dreams. If anyone out there needs interpreting of dreams, don't forget me, don't forget me. So on one hand, it's a lack of bitachon, but yet the pasuk, which defines Yosef as Austria Gever, Asher Som Hashem Mivtochi, they put his trust in Hashem. So which one was it? Did he put his trust in Hashem, or did he put his trust in the butler? And if he did put his trust in Hashem, then why is he in prison for 2 years? And what has this got to do with Hannukah? So, as you know, as rabbis, we like to answer a question with a question. So the question I have for you, therefore, is the following. In fact, just before that, quick Beis Halevi, Hashem just put it into my head. If you look back at the pasuk Mem Aleph, Vayhi Miketz Shnosayim Yomim, it was the end of 2 years, or Paro Cholem, and Paro had a dream. So this is a beautiful way to look at life. Says the Beis Halevi, normally you'd say, why did Yosef leave prison? Because finally, 2 years later, Paro had a dream, and then the butler remembered that there's someone in the prison who can interpret dreams, and as a consequence of Paro having a dream, Yosef leaves the prison. But the pasuk says the opposite. The pasuk says, "Vayhi miketz nosayim yomim." Hashem said at the end, "Or Paro chaylein." So as a consequence, Paro has a dream. So when we're looking at things in the olam haruchnius, we have to understand what the cause and effect. So, for example, for myself, close to 30 years ago, a rabbi from Gateshead Sem called Rav Miller called up my parents and said, I saw your son at a chasna. I think he could be a good shidduch for this girl I have in my Sem called Leah. So you could argue the reason that I married my wife is because Rav Miller gave me a call. Everything came as a consequence of Rav Miller calling and seeing me at this wedding of Chaim Meshahas in Manchester, which I escorted Reb Shlomo Brevda. So it was amazing. A mitzvah, geros mitzvah, one mitzvah leads to another mitzvah. So you could have argued, think about when you met your spouse, for those of you in that matzav, you say, oh, as a result of that meeting, that was the cause. The consequence is now we got married. We'll say, the Beis Halevi says it's pum faket. You have a baskoi, you have a soulmate, starting point. Cause, effect, Hashem's working out, where are you going to meet? So in my case, I had to go and it was amazing. Something came over me. It was the strangest thing. So something came over me at that chasna to go and say Shalom Aleichem to my sister's teacher, which was really bizarre because I'd never done that before. And I don't think I've ever done that again, but literally something came over me to go and say Shalom Aleichem to Rav Miller. And now we know why. And it's an amazing way to look at life. Instead of looking at life from a physical perspective of, and the physical event happens, cause, effect, good things come from that. We see clearly from the pasuk because the other way around. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has an agenda. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a master plan. Cause, effect, Hashem creates events to unfold to allow the cause to take place. It's an amazing idea, amazing. So back to our question. We asked, why did Yosef have to be in prison for 2 more years? And why is he the paragon of bitachon if he's being criticized for that? So I'm saying I'm going to ask a question with a question. It's the famous question of the Beis Yosef. I'm sure you've heard it now this Hannukah many times. Rabbi Yosef Cairo asks as the Beis Yosef, why is it that we have 8 nights Hannukah? Why do we celebrate for 8? Surely we should celebrate for 7 as the bracha we all made tonight. Baruch Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam she'asa nisim laviseinu. Nisim laviseinu. So thank you for the nisim. Ask the Beis Yosef, how many days was the nace? As you all know, the nace was only for 7 days because there was enough oil. There was sufficient oil to last for 24 hours. So vis-a-vis the nace, the miracle only took place if you do the maths, and it's really quite an easy bit of mathematics to do, that it's just 7 days. So why don't we have Hannukah for 7 days? And there's many answers, over 100 answers to this question. Famous answer, first night is winning the war, first night is finding the oil. But I'd like to share with you tonight, which will answer the question about Yosef HaTzadik, the Alter of Kelm's answer of Moshe Feinstein says this answer, and it's a very deep answer. And in it, we have to look at Rav Dessler. So if you look at Rav Dessler, he writes in his chapter about Nes and Teva, miracles in nature, and he poses the question, what is the difference between a miracle and nature? Miracle and nature. So if you kind of Wikipedia it, you'll see the basic difference of Wikipedia, from the Wikipedia, the secular definition of miracle and nature. Miracle is where God gets involved. Nature, things are working on autopilot. Science can explain it. Science rationalizes it. Says Rav Dessler, chas v'shalom. As anachnu ma'aminim b'nei ma'aminim, part of being Klal Yisrael is to understand that there is no difference between Nes and Teva, says Rav Dessler. No difference at all. Everything's in Nes. As we say, really, in davening, in moedim every day, every day. And 1 minute, we don't see the fleece, that the sea is splitting, we're not watching pigs fly, and we're not watching outright miracles, and therefore we see clearly the way the Anshe Knesset Gedolah, when Masak in the Amidah, that we can even say thank you for the miracles for day in, day out. The Bekeach Ivrim that we can see, and that's why it says Bekeach Ivrim. He opens up the sight for the blind, because Be'emes, were it not for Hashgacha Pratis, were it not for Nistim, everybody would be blind. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows us. The fact that we can see every day is a nace. The fact that we can breathe. The fact that the universe works. The fact that what we term as nature, it's a tragic mistake to think of that, that's just the natural. That's got nothing to do with Hashem. You know, the weather is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, everything's Hashem. In fact, we say in davening, Hashem renews creation every moment. And quantum physics actually corroborates that there's this renewal of energy constantly. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is constantly doing. And so therefore, says Rav Dessler, the only difference between miracle and nature is inconsistency, is in regularity. We're not really used to this. And since the Beis Hamikdash, Beis Harishon, was destroyed, we are no longer really able to be Zeicha outright. Nisim Geloyim, revealed miracles, where the laws of nature just is put on its head. But within nature, there are definitely Nisim Nistorim, hidden miracles, and even Teva is a nace. Even nature really is a nace, as the Maharal of Prague famously says. The gematria of Hateva, nature's Elohim, is one of the names of Hashem. Really, it's all Hashem. In fact, I'm sure you all know the difference between the number 7, the number 8. You know, the number 7, as we know, the 7 days of the week, 7 notes on the scale, for any musicians amongst you, 7 colors of the rainbow, 7 dwarfs and Snow White, and there's actually a pasuk. There's a pasuk found in Mishlei, in Perek Tes, pasuk Aleph, which says, Chavtza Amudei Sheva, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made 7 pillars. He wove 7 pillars. I think it's also to do in Kabbalah, to do with the 7 lower spheres. That's really the root cause of it. But in the physical structure, it's within the construct of 7. However, 8 is Me'al HaTeva, that which transcends nature. So, for example, that's why a Jewish baby boy, Hashem says you're going to be Me'al for 8 days, on the 8th day, because you're defined, and we, Baruch Hashem, as Klal Yisrael, are loyal and constrained to the 8, not the 7. What else is in 8? So a few things, let's have a think. Interesting, the gematria of a kohen is 75. Bitochen is the same gematria, 75. The Maharal says that a kohen stands between the 7 and the 8. The kohen is the one that bridges the 7 and 8, as we know in the Hannukah story. That the great family, which were the heroes, were kohanim. They were the ones who were able to conjure up the nace. They stand between 7 and 8. Even the word 8 in Hebrew, nothing is stam. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the word, the 8, Shemoineh, even every letter of the acronyms of different ways round that you can jumble up the word letter shmoina. Another way of saying is hashemen, oil. Another one neshama, soul. Another one mishnah. So we see this whole essence of the number 8 is referring to really transcendence. Even the shape 8 has no beginning, has no end. So 7 is very much a beginning and an end. 7 is nature. 8 is transcendence. 8 is me'al ha'teva. Now we start understanding why we have 8 days Hannukah. Because 8 days Hannukah is not just to say thank you for the overt miracles that you have oil which can only last for 24 hours, but yet last for 8 days. We say thank you as well for the 24 hours. Thank you so much that those 24 hours lit. That's a naze too. That's a miracle too. It's the famous Gemara of Hanina ben Dosa. He had his daughter. She didn't have Shabbos candles. She didn't have oil to light her Shabbos candles. One Erev Shabbos, and she's there she's crying. And Hanina ben Dosa says, my daughter, let the one who says oil will burn can say vinegar can burn. You got some vinegar, so what's your problem? You have a munir in Hashem, put vinegar in the candles. And she did. She put vinegar in. She had 100% bitachon, and it lit the whole of Shabbos. And the Gemara says she actually made havdalah on the same candle that she lit for Friday night. So we see that even lighting a candle is a nace. And that's one of the lessons of Hannukah, to teach us that there is no difference between nace and teva. No, there's no difference between nace and teva. Now, what's this got to do with Yosef? So now let's come and start understanding the story of Yosef. So Yosef's in the prison. He's in prison now. And he wants to get out. He really wants to get out. It's not a good place for a Jewish boy, a prison in Egypt. So he interprets the dream from the Baal, and he also understands the Hashgacha Pratis, the fact that they had a dream, the fact that Hashgacha was giving them the opportunity to interpret a dream, means l'chayra there's going to be Hashgacha Pratis about interpreting dreams. Which, agav, that became his Egyptian name, Sofnas Paneach, and my aunt who went to the British Museum actually saw a Egyptian mummy called Sofnas Paneach. So it was almost a name that must have continued down in the annals of Egyptian history as well. So that was who Yosef was, kind of his code name in Egypt, and he cut that. And therefore he said to the butler, make sure there'll be a certain point that please remember me. Now, should he or should he not have said that? So here we go. Says Rav Dessler, once you have real bitachon in Hashem, and once you understand that there's no difference between Nes and Teva, no difference at all between Nes and Teva, then you shouldn't be putting your trust in the butler. And you shouldn't be putting your trust in what we call hishtadlus. So again, let's explain again. Why do we, unfortunately, have to go to work to pay the mortgage, to pay for us to have food? Wouldn't it be nice, like we were when we were in Eretz Yisrael, when we were coming out of Mitzrayim, that for 40 years, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent man down. Yeridas Hamon, we had the over nace of Yeridas Hamon for 40 years. But unfortunately, we do Ishtadlus. We've got to go and do Ishtadlus. You know, so why? So as we know, it all stems from the sin of Adam and Chava, and the consequence of the sin. Hashem says, "B'seas achpecha teichal lechem." By the sweat of your brow you shall eat bread, which is kind of code name for this word hishtadlus. We've got to put the effort in. It explains with Dessler, but really hishtadlus isn't something to be glorified. It's not something to say, "Oh, I love hishtadlus. I love to do as much hishtadlus as I can." Wouldn't it be great to do 24/7 hishtadlus? Chas v'sholem, explains with Dessler. Hishtadlus, putting effort in, is actually, it's a punishment. Because really, in a muvadai, Hashem's in control. Wouldn't it be lovely for us to spend the majority of our day just devoted to K'menas Chasodim, to Torah, to Tefillah? Wouldn't that be lovely? But yet we've got to engage so much of our day in Hishtadlus. To explain to Rav Dessler, it's a punishment. And really, Hashem's saying to you, it's like you go to the judge and the judge says, how long do you want to be in prison for? We shouldn't be saying, oh, I want to be working, you know, from 8 in the morning till 10 at night, every day, apart from Shabbos. We shouldn't be saying that. We should say, can it be like, what's the minimum? What's the minimum? You see, Hishtadlus should be about minimum not maximum. In fact, Desla asks, why do we even have to do Ishtadlus? Why doesn't Hashem just send us down Nissim? And what's really interesting, this gets really deep, why is it that even the Hannukah miracle, there still needed to be a little bit of oil at the beginning? We still found some oil which lasts for 24 hours, which then magically, miraculously lasted for 8 days. Why didn't the Yevonim say, I trust you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, let the menorah go on, bang, and the light should have gone on? It's a bit of deep idea, but the Kubolim explain HaKadosh Baruch Hu only really once creates yesh me ayin, something from nothing. But generally, the nes works yesh me yesh, something from something. And critically, why? To give us bechira. In order that we have free will, because it's pivotal that we have bechira and we choose a yiras shamayim, a kol bidei shamayim chutz mi yiras shamayim. And when, especially in today's day and age, if we saw revealed miracles on a day in, day out basis, there would be no atheists, there'd be no agnostics, there'd be really no one not from, there'd be everyone who's from would be super crazy, holy from, all tzaddikim. And then all of a sudden we're not earning our ruchnias. So in order to earn our ruchnias, Hashem has to hide. And that's why it says this world is called olam, lehit alem, which means to hide. Hashem hides behind his mask as such. And therefore Hashem, even when he conjures up miracles, for example, when Elisha went and did and helped resurrect someone, the Isha Shunamis, they were still mouth to mouth, because some people could have said, oh, he knew how to do mouth to mouth. Even the candles in the Hannukah story, you could have said, oh, really, the oil, just it was very, the oil, you misunderstood. It really was oil which could have lasted for 8 days. I'm sure the atheists and cynics in those times could have said, yeah, the oil could have lasted for 8 days. You just, misjudged how long you thought the oil could only last for 24 hours. But really, the oil lasted for 8 days. There must have been sufficient. So when HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu to go up on Mount Nevo and see Eretz Yisrael, you can't see Eretz Yisrael from Mount Nevo where he went to. But Rav Dessler explains, he's doing an active Ishtadlus, he's climbing a mountain. So the cynics could say, oh, there must have been an amazing vantage point. Time and time again, when Hashem tells Noach to build the Teva, where the whole dimensions of the Teva were miraculous. There's no way all the animals could have literally, naturally fitted in there. But again, he worked for a long time, 120 years. The cynics will say, oh, it's massive. The Teva is so massive, that's how everything could fit. Do you understand? So we do Ishtadlus in a sense, to hide the miracle from Raivam, from the majority of people, so that they can choose to believe if they want to. And that's why we have to do Ishtadlus, to really hide the miracle. So really, Hashem's the one who decides how much you're going to earn every year. It's not your Hishtadlus, which is the cause of how much you earn. On your Rosh Hashanah, really, Hashem's going to decide based on many factors how much you need. Ironically, not so much based on your Hishtadlus. Your Hishtadlus is really making the vessel, and then Hashem fills that vessel. The Hishtadlus is ironically something to minimize, not maximize. And therefore, and we'll go into the minutiae in a moment, now we understand the answer for Yosef HaTzadik. It's dafka because he's a tzaddik. Because he's on such a level, as Rav Dessler, the graph goes, the higher you are as a tzaddik, the lower you need to do Ishtadlus. So because Yosef is on such a high level, tzaddik Yisod Olam, his level of Ishtadlus should be almost incredibly minimal. The smallest. For him to say to the butler twice, remember me, oy, a year prison for each one. As a kasha, the brisker Rav asked Shimon Scott, what happens if he would have just said it once? If you think about it, what would you say? What happens if he would have just said it once? Remember me. So then becomes a machlekes. Some say he got 1 year prison. Some will say, no, that was his minimal ishtadlus. I personally am of the feeling that he would have got a year prison. Why? Because on his level, surely enough, his ishtadlus was just to interpret the dream. That was it. He's interpreted the dream. He's now shown his cards. He can interpret dreams. So now he can go back to his Tehillim. Now he can go back to his learning Torah and go back to doing all the tikkunim of all the tikkunim he was being a sucker. He doesn't have to go and mention me. L'chara, on his levels, a little bit of lack of bitachon, too much putting bitachon in the butler, and for that, bang, 2 years prison. But for us mere mortals, it's really important to know, for us mere mortals, we do need to know that we have to do hishtadlus. We can't rely on a miracle. You can't just, jump out of a hotel building and say Hashem will catch me. We can't just lie in bed all day, or even just really even sit and learn all day and say Hashem is going to fund my lifestyle. He's going to pay the mortgage. That's relying on a miracle. We can't do. So here's this amazing formula that I hope can change your life if you understand it. Because the question is, how much hishtadlus do you need to do? So, say for me, for example, my daughter's in shidduchim. How many shatchonim do we need to pull? Is once a week good enough? Is once a month good enough? Is once a year? Maybe after Rosh Hashanah you make one call to a shadchan. Hashem, I've done my hishtadlus. So how do you know how much hishtadlus has got to do? How would Yosef have known how much hishtadlus he needs to do at that moment? And the answer is beautiful. It says Rav Dessler, you've got to do as much that if things do not work out, you'll have no regrets. Isn't that deep? Do you hear that? So if things don't work out, so for example, for me, I've got to do hishtadlus for my daughter to get to speak to Shatchon. Meaning, if I would just do once after Rosh Hashanah, and then came not next Rosh Hashanah and she was still single, I think my wife would definitely be very unimpressed with me, and that wouldn't be good hishtadlus. And me, I think I'll also realize maybe I was being, a little bit too holy. So therefore, I've got to do more than that. For me, personally, I think once a month, something like that, once a month is enough. But to do it every day and to do meshuggah and to be worrying, and Rav Dessler says every time we worry, it's mamash a lack of bitachon. It's really a lack of bitachon, which is a really deep idea. If you worry about whether it's your shidduchim or parnasa or health, then you're really saying to Hashem, I don't trust you, it's on me. So that's for sure, we can't worry. And the level, so for example, work. So Rav Dessler suggests that you just do a little bit less work. So for example, if someone feels, and there's a lot of people that go work in the city, they feel, especially the first few years, we've got to be there till 11 o'clock at night. So I always say to Talmidim, just do a little, tiny bit less than what the society say, what the belts say. Just a little bit less, and and as long as you think, in other words, do something that then if things don't work out, you can't blame that. And that's really the criteria. So someone who normally has to work 12 hours a day, if he works 11 hours and 55 minutes, someone who feels they can work 9 hours a day to work 8 hours and 55 minutes, just do a little bit less than what society say. Then when you see you're doing well on that, again, just take it off another 5 minutes. But the cheshbon is to do the level of hishtadlus that if things were to not work out, you wouldn't feel charot, you wouldn't have regret. So there's a good example of Dessler gives about a lottery ticket. He says, I'm going to teach you now, everybody. Here we go. It's worth listening for tonight. I'm going to show you, everybody, according to Kabbalah, how to win the lottery. But again, I think it's really important that you give a commission to my favorite stocker. Here we go. If you want how to win the lottery, according to Rav Dessler. So he brings in my sister Hoya from Rav Zundel of Salant, the Rebbe of Rabbi Salant. He says Rav Zundel used to say there was a tkufa in his life where he really didn't want to have to engage in work. He didn't have to engage in fundraising. So he actually went, and once a year there was a lottery of the town, and he would win for quite a few years in a row. He would have bitachon, just buy the ticket for him. That was his hishtadlus. Can you imagine? As we're saying, work 5 minutes less. For Rabbi Zundel, it was just buy one ticket a year, get in, that's enough. And he won year after year. One of his Talmidim heard about it and said, oh, me too. So let me go to a different place and I'll buy a different lottery ticket. And then both of us, and his wife was not impressed, and he went and quit his job and he went and bought a lottery ticket and nothing came. And he went back to his Rebbe, he said, Rabbi Zundel, I thought you said you just got to have bitachon, that you're going to win the lottery. I had bitachon. I didn't win. Rabbi Zundel goes, go back next month and take your chavrasa with you. So he went back the next month, and Rabbi Zundel has spoken to his chavrasa. So imagine this. You're now in the news agent, and I think it's quite nagel on my side. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there could be a euro millions of 180 million, either pounds or euros, I'm not really bothered, right, available to the Welt this Tuesday night of Hannukah, right? So it's enough to buy some donuts. So the question is like this. Imagine you go into Tesco with your mask on, and you buy your ticket. So Rav Zundel said to the Chavrusa when he bought his ticket, tap him on the shoulder, which now has to be in a social distancing way, and say, what would you do? I want to buy your ticket off you. So the ticket costs £2.50. So he says, I'm going to buy your ticket for £1 million. So imagine that. Now you buy your ticket, £2.50, and then I'm offering you £1 million for the ticket. Who's going to take it? So everyone's going to take it. And the guy said, sure, I'll give you $1 million. And he says, now go and see your Rebbe. Reb Zundel said, of course you can't win it. Because the only way to know if you can win the lottery this Tuesday night, according to the criteria of Bitachon, is if you bought the ticket and you wouldn't barter it for anything under 180 million. If it's 180 million, you have Bitachon, you're going to win 180 million. So the fact you'd even take 100 million would be you don't really believe it's going to be 180 million. So if you really believed it was going to be 180 million, who would swap 180 million for 100 million? Are you with me? So that's how to win the lottery, to have so much Bitachon that it's for sure, just like you put the tap on, you know for sure water's going to come out. So for that level of certainty, and this is the chap, when you look at a nace as such, almost as teva, meaning that's the way Hashem rolls. He operates in that way. I know for sure. I have faith that that's the way, we know the sun's going to rise in the morning and the sun sets at night. So when we have the same level of bitachon in the areas of how Hashem looks after us, that's when we can relax. And so we're saying for Yosef, he did a little bit too much. He did a little bit too much. He did a bit too much. Ishtadlus. And he should have done less, and then he could have got out of prison earlier, according to Rav Dessler. So that is idea number one. Idea number two I'd like to share with you briefly is how can we therefore see miracles in our day? How can we see miracles? We all are different Yeshuas we're davening for, I'm sure. How can we see? So I saw something very beautiful from the Divrei Chaim. The Divrei Chaim says, from the Mishnah that we say in Haneris Halalu, we say in Haneris Halalu, Ein lanu reshus, ela lehishtamesh b'hem, ela lireisam bilvad. HaKadosh Baruch Hu only wants you, I think there's candles still a light behind me, just to see them, not to benefit from them, right? We can't use those candles according to Rav in the Gemara to go and utilize for other things. What does it mean just to see them? So let's see if we can understand. Step one is we have to learn how to see the miracle, just to see the light, not to use the light, because when we're mishtamish in it, then we're using our own yigir. We're using our own ishtadlus. That's one of the problems of ishtadlus. We're putting our effort into things. So the first point, if you want to see miracles, then really step out the way. Start, ironically, from an ego and physical perspective, doing less. Let Hashem take over. Hashem is Chazon is Hakol, we say in Ben Shir. So if we really say Hashem is Chazon is Hakol, why are we worried so much about Parnasah? Why are we working so hard for Parnasah? So then we don't think Hashem is Chazon is Hakol. We think I'm Chazon is Hakol. So then which one is it? Are you Chazon is Hakol or is Hashem Chazon is Hakol? So the Divrei Chaim says we should learn how to see the candles. Just see it. And lo lishtamish b'hem. Not to put our own physical action into that. The Yismach Yisrael would say you could even see Hashem's name in the candles, whatever that means. In the shameless would be within the candles. Meaning if you really just look and step out the way, you're allowing HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light to illuminate into your home. But I think I'd like to give a few practical steps of how then to see miracles. Number one, to lessen the ishtadlus. I think if we less ishtadlus and let Hashem do more, that's one way to bring the nace in. In the Yevonim, when the Greeks came to try and harm Klal Yisrael, and this Kohen army, the Maccabees, Rabbi Yochanan HaKohen Gadol and his family, went and fought them. They weren't army. They weren't an army. They had no military training. And here's what's really interesting. They didn't go, and what we would normally do is you try and work out who are the other enemies of the Greeks, who would benefit from taking the Greeks out, and you kind of make a whole new coalition of enemies of the Greeks and would create a huge army to oppose the Greeks. But they didn't do that. They said, you know what, Hashem, we trust you. We trust you. So they took a stone, they threw the stone, And Chazal say that stone blew up thousands of Greeks. When the Greeks would send an arrow hurling towards Klal Yisrael, Kodesh Baruch Hu made a nace, and the arrow turned back and hit the Greeks. It was the most incredible war, probably mamish nace nigla, that war. And that's why, according to one opinion, that's why we have 8 days. Day one is for the miracle of the war. But you see, they didn't do the ishtadlus that anyone else would do. They had such a level of emunah. Such a level of emunah. That's why the nace happened. When they went and they found the oil. They found the oil. And this is my next step. You want to see miracles in your life? Have bitachon. Have trust. If you really put your bitachon in Hashem, kindness comes around him. So I think that's what happened. They had so much bitachon that they would find oil. They went to the Beis Hamikdash. They knew they were going to go and put the light on the menorah. For sure. And Agav, as you know, they could have used the jugs which were unsealed. But you could use that. But they had lachatchila, they were going to be machmir. They knew that 100% there was going to be a jug in there, which was going to be unbroken. There was going to be kodesh in the holy of holies, and they were going to be able to put that in the menorah. They had the bitachon, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu then gave them that which their bitachon was mekasher to. So that's step number 2. So step number 1, I'm saying less ishtadlus. Step number 2, more bitachon than Hashem. Number 3, and this is a little bit deep. You know, there's a phrase attributed to Gandhi, which I saw actually wasn't what he said, where he said, "You be the change you want to see in the world." Apparently he didn't exactly say that, but it's a famous quote, "You be the change." So I'd like to kind of coin that phrase and say, you be the miracle. What does that mean, you be the miracle? So it says in Tehillim, we said this morning in Hallel, Hayom Ra'a Vayonos, that the sea saw that he fled. So when the miracle of Kriyas Yamsuf happened, the sea opened up, the nace of Kriyas Yamsuf opened up. Why? Because the sea saw that he fled. Say Chazal, who is he fled? It was Yosef HaTzadik. It was in last week's parsha that when Yosef was in the Eishes Potiphar and he was about to sin, he was able to summon the image of his father in a window, and that got him to get back to his clarity, to stop the forgetting, to get to the light, to get to clarity. And he flew out. He fled by Yonas Achutza. He ran outside, and he was able to be miraculous in his midah. He was able not to do something which 99% of people wouldn't have been able to do. He overcame what was going to happen. He overcame Teva. He overcame what seemed to happen, and he himself became miraculous. And as a result of him being miraculous, then the nace happened. So I think that's a really beautiful idea. When we overcome our midas. So for example, if we're struggling with Lashon Hara, and it's almost the nigh-on conclusion we're going to speak Lashon Hara, then for the moment we stop ourselves, and we don't do what 99.9% of the world do and just keep on gossiping, we stop. That's being the miracle. Then Hayom Ra Vayonos, then seeing that we are going against our Teva. You want to create the nace, then we need to go against Teva to reveal the miracle, and so on and so forth. I think when we overcome midas, especially the ones that are really hard for us, the ones that maybe we've, as a habit, we haven't broken for 40, 50 years, and then we break that habit for L'Shem Shamayim, wow, that's the way to be zeicha to see miracles. And number four, I think this is a really interesting one. You want to see miracles, you have to learn to take your nagias out of it. See, too many times in life when we're not seeing the candle, you're seeing yourself, you're seeing a reflection of yourself in the candle. What do we mean? How many times have you been involved in a situation where you weren't able to be objective about the situation because you had nagias, you had bias? There may be anger, maybe that person upset you a few years back, maybe you've got a certain philosophy about something, and therefore you're not objectively able to see emes. And as a result of that, we make terrible mistakes. We make bad mistakes in Bechira. Aveiros happen. So if you want to see the miracle, If you want to see the candle, then take your own reflection out of it. Then take your own bias out. Make sure if you're looking, for example, if any of you are involved in a dilemma right now, then take this as an experiment. Start asking yourself, why is it such a dilemma? Why am I in so much suffix? Maybe there's a bit of anger. Maybe there's envy. Maybe there's jealousy. Maybe I'm holding a grudge. Maybe I'm in a bad mood. And you've got to start thinking, maybe I've got anxiety. And when we are involved, then all of a sudden we're not able to see that clarity. We're not able to see that light. But ironically, by therefore removing ourselves, by removing the negias from the matzav, that enables us to see the light, which then enables us to see the miracles. So I think that's a beautiful idea of Hannukah, to understand how to see the light. You really see the light of the menorah. As we said in the Mishnah, let's not get involved ourselves. Just see. I think sight is an amazing thing if you think about it. Sight is something. If I'm looking now, I'm not really doing anything. I'm not really being involved in. When you see something, it should be that you see it without putting your own spin on it. You're just seeing. You're kind of doing nothing. You're just letting it in. The problem is when we let things in. I saw that's why there's two brachas we say in the morning. We say Pekech Ivrim. We also say Hamav Sheina Le'enai. We make two brachas for sight in the morning when we wake up. And I saw because one thing is to see, but the other thing is to see correctly, to see from an emes perspective, to see objectively, to see what Hashem wants us to see and not see what our Yetzer Hara is trying to confuse the issue. Because as we started today, darkness is really where the Yetzer Hara enters in, which creates forgetting. And the goal is to learn to see clearly. So I'd like to finish off with one of my favorite miracle stories, if it's okay with you, to say a nice Maisa to finish off. Like my Hannukah gift to you is, for me, one of the most amazing stories I've heard. If you want to look it up, it's in the book, Small Miracles in the Holocaust. And then at the end of that, I'd be happy if anybody's got a question. Don't be shy, you can ask a question if you want. And also you can always email me, avihill248@gmail.com, to ask any questions you have. Here we go. Here's the Hannukah miracle story for you. So it happened in the Holocaust, happened in Auschwitz. And I've had the schos actually to take trips there, because when I take people there, it's you have incredible Osiris. Because ironically, by seeing the darkness, you really appreciate the light. And you appreciate what it means to be Klal Yisrael, the nami stroll. And I've had many Talmidim who are more inspired, ironically, from going on the Poland trip than actually going to Eretz Yisrael, which is an amazing thing. So anyway, when you go to Auschwitz, you see the train track. And as you know, when the Yidden came off the train, the Nazis, if they would say left, that was to the Nazis' left was the gas chambers. The right, they were going to go to the work camp and they were going to survive another day. So one fateful day for this young Jewish lady, she came off the train and the Nazis looked at her and they said, for you, left. And then they laughed at her and they said, but you don't need that where you're going. And they pointed to her fur coat. She had a beautiful fur coat on. And they said, you definitely don't need that where you're going. And that was taken off and taken to this place called Canada, which is the place where all Jewish valuables were put. So this fur coat is now in Canada, and these two Polish workers see this fur coat and they think, wow, this is unlike any coat I've seen before. This looks different to the normal coats. This is a coat which is moving. It's breathing. And they went to the coat and they saw that the coat was literally moving and breathing. And they looked inside and they saw there was a little baby, a newborn baby was in the coat, that obviously the young mother wanted to at least save the baby's life. And these Polish workers said, oh, it's a gift from God. One of them themselves, they said, I can't have children. God, you've given me a child. And then she went, she cut herself. She started screaming that she just had a baby, and she was taken out of Auschwitz with this young Jewish newborn baby. True story. 37, let's fast forward 37 years. 37 years later, it's the young baby had grown up to be a Polish doctor called Sarah, who's standing at her mother's funeral, the person who she thought was her mother. She's just buried her mother and she's walking away from the funeral. And her aunt taps her on the shoulder and says, Sarah, I've been waiting 37 years to tell you something. You should just know that wasn't your biological mother that you buried. She loved you very much. And she'd always be your mom, but she wasn't your biological mother, because I was there when she and me found you in this place called Auschwitz. And she told her the story. And Sarah is now not impressed. She's kind of very angry. She goes, are you joking? I just buried my mother and you're telling me that that wasn't my mother? Are you sick? Are you deranged? What proof do you have? Give me some proof at least. Give me some evidence. And the aunt says, the only thing I can think of is when we found you, you're wearing an incredible, beautiful silver necklace with some strange letterings on. See if your mother has got it still in her valuables. So now Sarah's running back. She needs to find out the truth about this or not. And so she goes back in the jewelry drawer and she rummages around and she finds this beautiful, silver, gorgeous necklace with some strange letterings on that she feels somewhat drawn to. She now puts it around her necklace, her neck, and now she's wearing this, but she's confused, doesn't know what the day it is. And like, what does that mean? I'm Jewish. What does that mean? She chances upon some Israelis that summer and tells them the story and shows them the necklace and says, what are these three letters? And they say, it's a summer, sin, an erasure, and a hey, which says in Hebrew for Sarah. And she goes, well, my name's Sarah. This is really weird. This is really spooky. What do you do? And they said, listen, we don't know what to tell you, but we know someone who's very close to a great tzaddik in America called the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Let's go and ask him what to do. So they took her number. And a few weeks later, a message came back to Sarah from the Rebbe himself. And the Rebbe said the following: Sarah, you're Jewish, you're halachically Jewish. And his cryptic message was, we need doctors in Israel. We need doctors in Israel. That was his amazing message. And even more miraculous, in a sense, she said, okay, it must be a sign. Let's go to Israel. And she went to Israel. She started working in the Hadassah hospital. She fell in love with the doctor there and she got married under a chuppah in Baruch Hashem. She came back home, amazingly, after what happened in Auschwitz. And she was living happily ever after till the year 2005, where she's with her husband in the Sparrow Cafe in Yerushalayim, Yer HaKodesh, on the very moment when there was a terrible suicide bomb. Terrorist came in, blew himself up. Many, many died that day at the cafe. Can you imagine Sarah surviving Auschwitz, but seemingly not surviving a coffee? But she did, Baruch Hashem, survive. She survived, and not only did she survive, she helped many Yidden that day, ferrying them from the cafe to Mizgav Ladach. So the cafe to Mizgav Ladach, that some of you might know. And she's now in Mizgav Ladach, and this old man comes to her and says, you got to help me find my granddaughter. Please help me find my granddaughter. And Sarah says, sure, I'll go back and look. What does she look like? And he says, she's got her beautiful necklace on that I gave her. Beautiful necklace, silver necklace. So she now goes back to the cafe and she finds this young girl. She finds the girl and she's wearing the same necklace that she's got. It's the same necklace, different letters, same necklace. And now she's frantic. She needs to find out who this man is and where he bought the necklace. And she's now schlepping this poor girl back to Mizgav Ladach, finds the old man and says, where did you buy this necklace? I need to know. And the old man looks and said, buy it? Couldn't buy it. I made it with my own hands. And I gave it. One of them to my little baby daughter, who I never saw again, who died in the Holocaust. And the other to her mother. At that point, she writes, a true story, a miracle happens where Sarah is reunited with her father. How many? 60 years after the Holocaust. True story where they're reunited. And therefore, you see that that's what we call a nace within Teva. There wasn't an overt miracles, but what's the likelihood of that? What's the possibility of that? But HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world. And if we learn how to see miracles, we can also, B'ez Hashem, experience Yeshua and B'ez Hashem through the miracle of Hannukah and Nisyix. We say, Bayomim Ahim Bazman Hazeh. So we say now, Bazman Hazeh, Toshim Bei Aleph. May we see Nisim today, 2 nights, the day 4. We've got a few more days to go, B'ez Hashem. By the end of Hannukah, we should all be Zeicher to the greatest nace of all, the Bias Goyal, B'Meher of Yameinu, Amen. Happy to take any if anybody's got any questions. And if not, we'll see you, B'ez Hashem, next week, 8 o'clock. Hopefully in Eretz Yisrael, hopefully Mashiach will still allow us to give shir as well. But happy to take any questions. Any questions? I'll take that as a no. But happy for you to send me questions. So wishing you well. Happy Hannukah, everybody. Happy Hannukah. And looking forward to seeing you.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Take care.
Thank you.
All